Hey there, listeners. Welcome to the Nerdy Photographer Podcast. I am your host, Casey Fatchett. If you haven't listened to the podcast before, in addition to bringing you informative and entertaining photography and business-related content, I also got adventures with the crew of the Starship Fibonacci. We were recently visited by the super cool photographer. He's a version of me from another dimension where I'm, super cool. Go figure. Anyway, he says that we need to get prepared to start dealing with interdimensional interlopers and things, quote unquote, of that nature, whatever that means. Well, that does not sound good. Okay, better do the intro. In this episode, elopement photographer Rob Dight is back with us again, all the way from Ireland. Rob and I are discussing mindset shifts that can make you more money and reduce your anxiety. So be sure to tune in for that discussion after the short break.
Set blasters on full. Drop your weapon!
Oh man, you guys just interloped on the wrong guy.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how we handle the situation.
Did you have a contract?
Well, I had one I found for free online, but my lawyer says it might not hold up.
Next time you should head over to nerdyphotographer.com. They've got a selection of contract templates for weddings, events, portrait sessions, and even for hiring second photographers and associate photographers, which would certainly have helped you in your current situation.
Really? I will check that out. Nerdyphotographer.com?
Yep, nerdyphotographer.com. They've got all sorts of contracts and agreements that can help make sure to protect you and your clients. So what are you going to do?
Well, we just have to wait and see what happens, I guess.
So, no pants on?
Who know anything below the waist? Totally Porky Pig in it.
Impressive.
Not really. Yeah, it was pretty cold out.
Ew.
Yep.
Hello and welcome to the Nerdy Photographer Podcast. I am your host, Casey Fatchett, and we are back today with Rob Dight. Welcome, Rob.
Hey man, thanks for having me. I'm so stoked to be on today.
I'm
awesome.
I'm really excited to have you back. And we're going to talk today about, photographers tend to get into this sort of ruts mentally. We start to think a certain way. We start to it's a habit. We start to get in these mental sort of habits. And we're going to talk about some habits, ways to change those habits and shift the way that we think that can end up making us money as photographers. And so you had brought up a few topics. Why don't you start that off for me?
Yeah. So, the whole topic of money can be so loaded for so many people. And the things I want to talk about today are just things that keep cropping up when I'm kind of helping photographers through one-to-ones or through a Facebook group or through workshops. And they're kind of almost subtle things that if we can change, that will really make a difference to our income. So yeah, it's kind of, we're going to jump into it and kind of hopefully break down three kind of wrong ways of thinking that if we can tweak and change, can really make a difference to people's bottom line, their profits and their businesses.
Yeah, because everybody wants to make more money. Making more money would be great. That's I think that we tend to we see things a certain way and we don't realize how it's negatively impacting our photography business.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And like for me, when I first started out, it was literally everything's about photographs. And that first 2-3 years, it's just obsession with photography, which is great and really helps you level up your work. But the other side of the business, with the business side itself, there's so many things we can tweak and improve and learn. And if we do work on those elements, they can really kind of drastically change the quality of our lives. And we can move from being a starving artist to being someone who actually runs a profitable business, which is a nice place to be. So yeah, should I jump in the first idea?
Yeah, just a second. I think that's a really good thought to have. I think that's one of the main reasons I do a lot of business stuff on the podcast is because artists tend to think specifically about if I create my art or if I take great pictures, the success as a business is going to come. And that's not necessarily
Yep.
the case. So what's the first
Mm-mm.
one? What's the first shift that we need to make?
Well, hold on. You made an idea come into my head. You know, when someone who's an author, right, who's a really successful author, like the best authors, what do we call them?
Authors. I
The
don't
New
know.
York Times.
Bestsellers. Bestsellers.
Yeah, bestsellers. So it's not necessarily the best author; it's the bestseller. And you know, we're aware of them because they've sold a hell of a lot of books. And you know, you might be the greatest photographer on planet Earth, but if no one knows about you, if no one's booking you, then you know there's something wrong with that. And I think it's a good lesson to learn just in that, even that phrase, the bestseller, because we can get so lost in the art side of things that we don't run our business as well. So yeah. Anyway, sorry to just kind of interrupt there, but yeah, the
No
first one,
problem.
the first issue that I've seen this in myself as well, is that when you see another photographer doing well, you know, they post on social media, just booked a 10K wedding, or I'm fully booked for 2022. And part of you can see that and almost like jealousy, or there's a feeling that if they do well, there's not enough left for me. And I believe that is a lie, personally. But it's something it's gone through my mind where you're like, oh my goodness, you know, they're doing so well. That's
Right.
going to make me do worse.
Yeah, I think it's maybe it's a sense of it's not, I definitely think there's like, oh man, why can't I be doing that well? I think there's a sort
Hmm.
of there, and I know there's part jealousy to that, because I mean I know I've definitely been there, and it's that sort of like it comes around with like both jobs or like gear envy. Gear, and when you see somebody's got like,
Yeah.
like, oh, look at that lighting setup, or look at that, camera setup, whatever. Like, I wish I had that. Like, oh, because they whatever they have is so great. Like, it's all that sort of like, the grass is always greener on the other side, but you don't know what that person's journey has been, or if they're
Hmm.
actually, booking those jobs. That's a
Yeah.
whole
It
other,
could be lies.
that's a whole other discussion to have, like, as to whether or not, hey, I'm 100% booked for next year. Oh, really? Are you? Like, is that really where you want to be? Do you want to be working too hard? Maybe you should raise your rates.
So yeah, the idea that someone else doing well affects you or affects me is kind of, I believe it's a lie. And there are sort of two ways of thinking about this. There's a lack mentality, which is there's not enough to go around, there's scarcity, and I've got to grab everything I can because if I don't, someone else will get it and I'll lose out. And you know, it's that kind of, you know, you see a table of food with lots of children around it, and everyone's grabbing something. If you don't get it fast, there won't be enough for you. But I kind of like to live my life with an abundance mentality, knowing that, you know what, even if everything on this table was taken away, there's still some extras in the kitchen. There's some seconds to come and some thirds to come. And having that little shift in your head that, you know what, just because they do well doesn't actually negatively affect me. And in actual fact, I believe the opposite. I believe that someone else doing well, like in my region, if someone else is doing well financially, that is good for me. Because if they start booking 10K weddings regularly, then you know what, that changes a few things. It changes the dynamic of our kind of area. So you
Changes
know that
it
the
changes the market that you're in. Like, people like in the market are starting to get more used to paying more money for things.
exactly,
If
yeah.
everybody's like, for example, if, like, everyone in like one town is used to paying, 300 for a portrait session, and that's just sort of like the going rate, whatever. And then all of a sudden, like more and more people are booking at 5, 6, 700. It's good for everybody, because then it's just more. Everybody's more used to paying more money. So yeah, I totally understand what
Exactly.
you're saying there.
So there's that element of it, but also the person that is booking the 10K weddings, they are no longer desperate to book as many weddings. So that means there's more left to go around. And there's another side of this thought is that, you know, there are only so many weddings you could shoot in a year. Like, so
Exactly.
if you live in, let's say New York or whatever, you know, if there's 10,000 weddings per year, do you want to book 10,000 weddings? No, you don't. If you booked 10,000 weddings, you would die. Like, it just wouldn't be possible to do all
Yeah.
that work, would it?
Yeah, no, you wouldn't. You don't want to do that much, and that's a lesson that I had to learn early on. That I was started out the first few years that I was doing weddings, and I was doing 40, 50 a year, and some of them were big, some of them were small, and it's just like there were just so many that I couldn't keep up. So I had to like limit, and it really changed my business. Like, started charging more, and limiting the number of weddings that I did each year. Like, both saved my sanity and actually made me more money.
Exactly. So yeah, having that mentality that there's more than enough to go around, and that someone else doing well actually lifts the level for our region. This is idea that I really, really love. And it's this, there's a phrase that the rising tide raises all ships. And I actually think it would be better for you, Casey, and for me where I live, if every photographer got paid more. Just it would transform so many areas. Like the standard of pricing would go up. People wouldn't be as desperate. They wouldn't be, kind of that kind of fighting over leads kind of thing, because you wouldn't be stressed out and desperate to earn an extra $100 next month because you've already built a business on strong pricing. And yeah, I just see benefits for everybody in someone else doing well. So that for me really helped me to see that someone else being successful doesn't hurt me. Actually, it benefits me, and I want everyone else to be successful. So like to change my thinking that I want every photographer on planet Earth to do well financially because it's good for them, but it's also really, really good for me. And it's a real shift in thinking. But once you have that thinking, it's like, wow, I actually want to help other photographers earn money. I want to help them. If I learn a way to set my pricing up that helps somebody, I will let them know as well, because I want them to do better. Because when they do better, the tide rises and it benefits us all.
Yeah, because the quality of everything, you want people to be taking better pictures. You want people to be earning more money, because it just raises, like you said, raises everybody else up. It's just, we all benefit from that shift in mindset, because then the clients start to value it more. They start to like pay. They're investing more money in their sessions or their weddings or whatever it is. They're paying more because there's a higher quality. They have a higher valuation of whatever it is we're doing. So
exactly.
I definitely agree with that. It benefits everyone, for everyone to do better, for all photographers to do better.
Yeah, even the idea, like, not if you just come away from money for a second, sometimes we could feel intimidated if somebody else starts producing really amazing work. But when you think of it in the rising tide sort of mentality, it's like, actually, it's good for them to lift the level, because it pushes me and spurs me on to do better. And as a photographer, we talked about it last time we did the podcast together. The growth is where the pleasure is for a photographer, when you're getting better and improving your craft, there's just a joy in that. So, I just see other people doing well as good for me. Like, it actually helps me. It lifts the level and it inspires me and pushes me on, because I don't want to stay where I was last year. I don't want to be that guy. I want to be the best version of me this year I can be. So yeah, I just think, there's no fear in someone else doing well. It's actually good for us. It's good for me. It's good for you.
I agree completely. I totally agree with that.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. That's what editing's for.
That's my mum, but it rings on my computer.
You got them connected.
I just hung up on it now.
You got them connected.
Yeah, I don't know how. I've somehow got it connected, but technically challenged.
It's all right. It happens to me on
cool.
all of my iPads ring at the same time, because I've got 3.
Yes, and my kids' ones.
Yeah, everything rings at the same time. I'm like, what? How do I? No, never mind. I don't want to figure it out.
Things you think. Yeah, I have that same thing. Like, I could, but I just don't have the hours to spare for that task.
Yeah, well, it's sort of like when we were getting ready for this. It's like, I don't know what's going on, but like every time there are certain apps, even though I've got the password saved in the phone or the tablet or whatever, every time I open it up, it's like, hey, what's your password? And I'm like, I don't remember. That's why I saved it in here, because, and then like Adobe, I don't know if you've been having this issue at all. Like, I've been having an issue for the last few months. Like, every time I don't know, like my computer just decides all of a sudden, hey, you got to sign into Adobe Cloud again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Do you remember your password? I'm like, yeah, and I do now, because after the first 3 times I, committed it, like all of the digits and, special characters to memory, because, there was like 5 times in a row where it was just like, I'd start up a program and be like, no, we signed you out. You got to
Yes,
you got to buy this or register. I'm like, what? I own this.
yeah, I realized because my MacBook broke and I sent it to Apple and they wiped it. So I had to re-sign in. But it turned out I had 2 Adobe profiles I was paying for. They just
Whoops.
everywhere. Yeah.
Hey, it worked out in your favor.
I saved £10 a month or something, whatever it was.
All right. So what's the second shift we can make in our thinking that will
Okay.
help us out?
I think this is huge, this idea. And it's really affected me and my business. Like since this mindset shift happened for me, like I've just made so much more money. So this is a game changer. So it's the idea that sales is not bad, right? If you can change, because sales gets kind of a bad rep. So the concept I've tweaked in my mind is that sales is actually great service. And, as I say the word sales, like Casey, if I say the word salesman, what comes to mind for you?
Car salesman.
Yeah. And how do you feel about that?
I feel a little twitchy. It makes me cringe a little bit. But also, like, and I'll get into this after you. Like, I totally understand what you mean. When we hear the word sales, we think of someone who's pushy. We immediately think of someone who is like trying to force us into buying something. I think we've just gotten so accustomed to that word. When we hear sales, it's like someone who's going to try to make you buy something.
Yeah, totally. So for me, when I was starting out as a wedding photographer, the thought of sales or selling something just really was almost appalling to me. Like I didn't want to be that person, because I know, a lot of people, when they think of the word sales or salesman, the word sleazy comes to mind, or the words like greedy, that type of thing, or pushy, like you mentioned. And we don't want to be that person, do we? But then, as you run a business, you realize that if I don't sell things, I don't have a business. I just have a charity that gives away photographs.
Yeah.
Um,
Unless you're actually getting
So-
people to pay you, you're not really running a business.
Yeah, totally. But the real mindset shift came for me when I realized, hold on, the people that have spent the most money with me are just the ones that I served the best. Like I went the furthest for them, and I just offered them things that I thought they would value and appreciate. And when I did, they bought them, and that's called selling. But to me, it was a shift of thinking, well, how can I serve them better? What would they want? What would they need? And this applies to my packages, to selling albums, prints, all that sort of stuff. Because if I don't at least offer my clients an album, then I believe I'm doing them a disservice. Like I might have that, in my pricing structure, here as an album. If I never actually say, hey guys, I've got some incredible albums, and these photographs that you've got, your most precious memories of your life so far, they deserve to be presented well. And if I don't do that and offer them an album that is really incredible, then what are they left with? They go to Walmart and get whatever they can, or get some prints, or do something, but it's not going to put their photographs in the best possible presentation.
Yeah.
And I want my couples. Yeah.
Sorry, the worst possible thing, they just stay in the cloud somewhere. They're on their phone, and like they never, like you never, like it just becomes an endless scroll of photos, and you never really take a moment to dwell on that picture or what it means to you or the emotional value of that photo, because it's just like, it's just somewhere in the cloud, and I never really look at it. Like serving those people by giving them something tangible that they can. It also gets handed down from generation to generation.
Yeah.
After my parents died last year, I mean, like looking through their old photos and things, like how much it meant to them. That's how you're serving. You're not just serving, your clients. You're serving their descendants, their future generations, all those things. And you offering them those things. I completely agree with you. Service is what leads to sales, and replacing like that, in your head, sales with service. That's a fantastic shift to make.
Well, for me, it changed the game, because like selling, still has connotations in my mind of negative stuff. But when I think of serving people, I want to serve my clients to the best of my ability. And part of that is to offer them things that are going to be valuable to them. And There's another side of this too, which is part of this. The service is that I'm gonna I'm gonna try and sell things well to them, if that makes sense, because it's not service if I don't explain to them that these albums are incredible, that they are museum grade. The papers are just the most amazing papers, and the colors will last for hundreds of years. Whereas if I just say you can get an album, that isn't me serving them well, and it's me almost feeling entitled that they should buy one from me. And no customer should buy anything from us. We have to kind of earn a sale, and we earn a sale by serving them well. And serving them well when it comes to products and stuff is to really explain the value behind what they're getting. It's not just some supermarket version of this is a high quality handcrafted thing.
Right.
And it's just a shift in thinking.
Yeah,
the more we can shift, serve them well, the better.
Yeah, I think that also and that's something that I did early on. I don't know, in the first 5 years of my career, I sort of oh, I'm just gonna get whatever book I can get, whatever's in my sample books were just whatever I could pick up, and I was like, oh, I gotta save money because I wasn't making a whole bunch of money. And it's also about investing the time and what you're talking about, the quality of the product so that you are serving your clients better. It's not just finding the most economically, how am I going to turn the biggest profit off of this, but also finding a product that is of quality to your clients and serving them that way. You are, and then explaining to them listen, I am not giving you something that's going to fall apart in 2 years. I am giving you the museum quality book that is going to be around for generations. And that's why it's worth so much. That's why it's worth paying this amount of money for. And, I just want to make sure you have the best because I really want to take care of you, because that's the truth. I don't want somebody coming back to me in 5 years and just being sad that oh, my album fell apart. No, I want to give them the best thing. I want them to, give this to their grandchildren or whoever, that this lasts for a very long time.
Yeah. Totally. And now my thinking has gone so far with this, in that if I don't offer them things like that, I'm doing them a disservice. If I, shoot 30 elopements next year, but I only offer 15 an album and talk to them about it, then I'm doing a disservice to the 15 others. Even if they have not showed interest in it, I should still, if I believe that this is going to benefit them in their future, in their next generation, then there's an onus on me just to at least make them aware of it and, go out there and do my best to serve them my utmost and not kind of disserve them, if that makes sense.
No, I totally understand what you're saying. It's one of those things where you have to if you really believe in it, you need to there's the power of print and giving something tangible or whatever it is. Whatever it might not just be prints. It might be something that you offer to your clients. If you really believe in it, you should be offering it to everybody. I completely agree with you.
Totally.
But I also what you were saying about that entitlement sort of nature. People should just be buying this for me, regardless of whether I present it to them or not. I mean, I feel like there's a segment of your career, and you normally, I think the biggest part of it is when when you're just starting out and you don't necessarily know the business part of it, or maybe you're just still learning photography and you don't necessarily feel as confident in the photography. Once you get confident enough in yourself is when it's really dangerous. It's enough to be dangerous to yourself and your own business is when people start to feel oh, I know what I'm doing. People should be paying me for this. Yeah. I should be getting top dollar for whatever I'm doing. And it reminds me of, knew this photographer who moved to New York City, and we were friends, and he was trying to get into weddings in New York. And, he had done 2 weddings, maybe total. And, that was all that was on his, he had on his website, he had 2, photos from 2 different weddings. And he was asking me how come do you think nobody's hiring me for weddings? And I was looking at his pricing was on the website. It was $5,000. And this is 15 years ago, maybe almost 15 years ago. It was a long time ago. And I was just well, you're charging an awful lot of money for, and you don't have much in the way of a wedding portfolio. And he goes, well, that's just what people charge around here. That's what I should be getting for a wedding because that's just the going rate for weddings around here. And I'm nah, actually it isn't. There's a whole other level of there's a pretty wide range. That's kind of that was almost high level at that point.
Yeah.
So,
Totally.
yeah, but he
Yeah.
just felt like, oh, people should, that's what the going rate for a wedding here is. I should be getting that, even though I don't have a portfolio.
hmm Yeah. And yeah, I believe I'm entitled to nothing. You know, even if you think whatever you're about yourself, you still need to go out there and earn it. And work hard for that. So yeah, we'll move on to the next one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's do that. What do you got next for me?
Awesome. So this is the last one, and this is something I just see it happen time and time again. So I'll give you what it is, and then we'll go into it. So I've worked with lots of photographers, right? And they know a way that they could make money today, and they don't do anything about it. So literally, I've done like one-to-ones with a photographer, and they tell me, I just need money. I've had a wedding cancelled because of COVID, and I just need money now. I've got bills stacking up, and what do I do? And then we go through something, and we think of 3, 4, maybe 5 things they could do today that would generate some sort of sales and income. And then I speak to them a week later, and they go, "Oh yeah, I thought about it, but I didn't do it." Even though they acknowledge they need money and they want money, yet they don't take action to make it happen. Does that make sense, Casey?
Oh, it absolutely makes sense, and I'm totally guilty of it myself. Like I know, like that this is something that I do, where I will sit there and be like, this is the thing that will actually help the business that I should be doing, but I want to do this thing that I think is more. I don't know, like it's easier. I don't know. It's sort of like a procrastination or putting off. I don't know. Mentally, it's I'd rather do this other thing than the thing that is going to actually help the business.
Yeah. I think part of it for some people anyway, it's this kind of self-sabotage thing that even though they mentally assent that they need and they want money and they've got a way to make it happen, there are some underlying beliefs around money and finances that kind of overpower that stuff. They don't even realize it's happening because it's under the surface. But a lot of people, when they were growing up, heard things like money doesn't grow on trees, money is evil, wealthy people are greedy, hard-earned money is a phrase they've heard time and time and again. And sometimes for photographers, they could email every single bride from the last 12 months and say, "Hey, I've got a print offer running today only, 50% off prints or something." And they might generate, a couple of $1,000s in sales in that one email that they send out. But they don't. And part of it is because they believe that money should be hard earned. And if they send one email and get paid $1,000 for it, then, that's not hard earned. So they don't want to do it because they don't want to kind of fight against their hard wiring. So for me personally, these were things that I heard a lot as a child. And I've had to kind of process, well, why do I believe what I believe about that? Even though I kind of want more money and I want to earn more money and, pay my mortgage, that sort of stuff, there's still these kind of deep-seated beliefs that were just ingrained. That makes sense?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that there's this just sort of almost like a subconscious aversion to easy money. If that's kind of what you're saying, it's like like there's something simple that I could do that would make me a bunch of money, but I am afraid to do it either because I'm afraid that that doesn't seem right. Like somehow I'm doing something wrong by like making money off of like this simple thing that I could do. Or I think there's also, there's a fear of success. Like some people are like, oh, if I do this, how am I going to handle this if, all of a sudden a bunch of people want, like if I do this thing, they'll self-sabotage themselves to like not do the thing that could really help them out because they're afraid of, that it's going to be, they're going to level up and then it's going to be, more than they can handle. I think that's definitely something that I've been guilty of at times. Like, what if this like, I do this simple thing that would obviously help my business, but then things really take off. Like, oh my God, how am I going to handle that when things like start going really well?
There really are. There's so many layers to it. Like, what you're saying is like 100%. Some people have that. Others have the part where they think they should work really, really hard for money. And that if you're a photographer, you might not think pressing a shutter is hard work. But when I press a shutter, that's 10 years of me practicing and working on my craft, so I do it really well. So there's that element of it that people don't appreciate. But even, if someone listened to the podcast, grew up, and they heard the phrase that money's evil over and over again, then even though they work for it and want it, deep down inside, there's something wrong with that. Or, if rich people are greedy and terrible, then why would I want to get more? Because I don't want to be terrible and greedy. And they're not thinking these thoughts like out loud almost. It's just deep-seated stuff. And, some of it is just, things that your grandparents maybe said.
Yeah.
Like money doesn't grow on trees. And, it's just all this stuff that kind of messes us up.
Yeah, there's this subconscious self-sabotage that keeps us from succeeding. And, there's a difference between being, successful and being greedy. There's just a lot that goes into it. And, we have to, like you said, get that mindset. Like, and I all those things you said, that money is the root of all evil. Like money doesn't grow on trees, very hard earned money, like all that, just like, I don't know, maybe it's the age range, but it's definitely like, those are very familiar phrases for me.
Oh, totally. Me too. And, as you work through these things yourself, like me personally, you start to realize, oh my goodness, no wonder I kind of got stuck at that level I did for 2 years, because there's a big part of me that didn't want to go further. And then as I kind of do my best to rip out those kind of wrong mindsets, honestly, it's like the mindset problems are like a dam in a river. And as soon as you remove them, it's so crazy how fast the change comes. For me personally, it's like, wow, I wish I'd done it earlier. It would have been so much better if this happened 5 years ago, but it happened a year ago. But still, once that thinking changes, something that then just kind of, it does take your business to another level. And, that to me is exciting, because if I can change the way I think, it changes what I do. And if it changes what I do, it changes my habits. And then my habits form my life, and my life is transformed just by changing one little thought.
Yeah. I mean, everything like that. I think that one of the things we also are usually guilty of, at least I am, and I've seen other people do it, is that when we find those things that can really help us and change, we get mad at ourselves at our past selves for not having realized it yet. And like you said, oh, I wish I would have realized this 5 years ago. And then I would do that, and I'd be like, oh man, why didn't if I would be in such a different place if I had just realized this, 5 years ago. Oh man, that would have been so much, things would have been so much. And I beat myself up about it, but like, no, like stop. And like, that's, I think, one thing to realize, you realize it now, learn from it, and move forward.
Yeah.
Like don't dwell on what could have happened in the past and where you could be now if you had just known this beforehand. Stop thinking about that. Now you have the tools. You have the tools now to move forward. And whenever you gain new tools, you use those to move forward too. You don't have to don't dwell on the past, because you can't change it.
Casey, you're deep, man. This is like some sort of therapy session now.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you better start listening. 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 Better start listening.
I'm Agent Scott.
And I'm Cam, the provocateur.
And together we are the Spy Hards podcast. Every Tuesday we decode the best and the worst of spy cinema to decipher if they make the knock list.
That's right, the knock list is the need-to-see official classics of the spy genre. The best of the best, so to speak. Nobody does it better. From Bourne to Bond and Powers to Palmer, you can bet we will cover it.
So subscribe now and revel in the audio equivalent of a smooth martini. Just search for Spy Hards, that's SPYHARDS on all major podcast apps. And let's just hope you find us before we find you.
Hey. And now for my favorite part of the show. What's that say? Useless information. This is always death.
You've been on before. Now it's time for our useless information for the episode.
Yep.
Rob, did you know that Charlie Chaplin once entered a Charlie Chaplin lookalike contest and lost?
Did he win?
He lost.
He lost.
Didn't even make the finals.
Very good.
He didn't even make the finals. They apparently didn't think he looked enough like Charlie Chaplin.
Have you got any more?
No, that's it. Thanks, Rob. I appreciate you coming on. I don't know if there's anything else you want to, like, if you've got anything going on you want to let people know about.
Yeah. So, like, for example, these money things, we just scratch the surface. There's so many more of these things cropping up. And I've got a Facebook group. If you go to Facebook and search Wedding Photography Education by Rob Dight, you'll find the group. And the group there, I've made the group essentially because the idea that I mentioned at the start about the rising tide, I want to help photographers level up. So that group's for free. There's loads of videos in there, how to do pricing, how to set things up, how to take better photographs, all that kind of stuff. So if someone wants any help with that stuff, jump in the group. It's free. There's a ton of resources there for you.
I'm there.
And I'll make it happen.
Yeah, and I'm there. So that's a great thing.
Hey.
I will include a link to that in the blog post that goes along with this episode. And yeah, if you think of anything else, you're always welcome to come back. Thanks, Rob.
Awesome.
It was great having you on. I really appreciate you coming on.
Loved it. Cheers, Casey. Thanks, man. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, you better start listening. 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 Better start listening.
Welcome back. We appear to have cleared out the interdimensional interloper infestation, at least for the moment. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave us a review. The Nerdy Photographer is an independent podcast, which means there's no team behind this show. It's just me. Your referrals and reviews go a long, long way to help this podcast reach new listeners. You can also find The Nerdy Photographer on Instagram, Twitter, and Reddit at The Nerdy Photo. I'd like to thank Rob Dight for joining us again on the podcast. You can find Rob on Instagram at Rob Dight. That's ROBDIGHT. Or check out his website, epiclovephotography.com. And you can find his Facebook group that we discussed in this episode by searching for Wedding Photography Education by Rob Dight. That's Wedding Photography Education by Rob Dight. Go check it out. Well, I guess I spoke too soon. Time to lock and load for the next wave. Until next time, folks, stay safe and stay nerdy.
Who's that coming back to town? You better start listening. Who's your heart been beating about? You better listen.